distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, friends and enemies.
Welcome to season 2 of the Make It Plain podcast. If you haven't checked out season 1, please do. That was all themed around Black studies and some of the work I've been doing and speaking to some really great people like Kimberlee Crenshaw, Patricia Hill Collins, David Harewood, and really trying to say, well, actually, what is the value and importance of Black studies? And that was funded by the Evans Foundation in Europe. In season 2, slightly different tack. Going to be interviewing some great people today. Going to be talking to George the poet. I'll introduce him a bit later. But we're also going to be trying to build what we call the Black United Front, which you may have heard me mention before, which is a directory of Black organizations. So every other week, we're going to be talking to different Black organizations around the world about their work that we're doing and kind of trying to spotlight and highlight. Because what we're really doing, and on this day, actually, we're launching season 2, because on this day, June the 28th, 1964, Malcolm X launched the Organization of Afro-American Unity. You may have heard of the OAAU, may not have heard of it because it was kind of been erased from his legacy. But that was the revolutionary organization for Malcolm X. That's Malcolm X's legacy. What is it? What he was trying to do? And so on this day, we've launched the podcast because they're really trying to frame this around. You may have heard of CAP 25, Convention of African People, that were organizing in the Gambia, May 17th to 19th. And the whole aim of that is to build the Harambee Organization of Black Unity that funds this podcast and funds Make It Plain. More generally, we're trying to build that into a global Black organization. Right, I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a second during the intro, but really just want to highlight why this day is important. June 28th, 1964, Organization of Afro-American Unity. Please do go check it out. If you go online, there is a speech, second founding rally of the OAAU, where Malcolm lays out in detail what the organization is, what it does, what it's trying to do. Right, and I'm going to talk about this a lot more throughout the podcast with the guests and everything like that. So yeah, please do tune into that. As I said, we're going to have George the poet on the pod first for series 2. He's got a book out called Track Records. I highly recommend, all about his life, his achievements. Check out George. Have you heard George's podcast too on BBC Sounds? So yeah, we're going to have a great conversation with George the poet. All right, so for the intro this week, before we get into the interview, etc., I have to talk about the coconut trial. Like, you may have heard, I did a video recently about there's a woman was in court this week, Mariah Hassan. She was carrying a placard that had Rishi Sunak and Braverman as coconuts. And the police took months to charge her. Even had the audacity to email me and talk to me and ask me if I thought it was a crime. I said, don't be ridiculous. They carried on, right? So I recorded this video. In truth, I was actually that video was that video, which you can find online. You go to the Make It Plain YouTube channel. I was gonna do it for the intro for the pod, right? But and this is the thing which American cousins don't 100% understand, because you have the First Amendment. It's actually a criminal. It can actually be a criminal offense to call out somebody a coconut or a coon or a House Negro, etc. Which is why Mariah Hassan is in court. And so I was like, look, this don't be ridiculous. This got to stop. Let's put it out. Let's make it plain, call it out. But I didn't want to get no one else in trouble. And there's a strangely enough, a decent chance I can get arrested for that. And so I did it off the pod because, we've got sound engineer and we've got other people helping the podcast. So that was a solo endeavor, I would say. So on the pod today, I ain't going to call nobody else directly because, again, other people involved. But I did want to say a couple of things because the feedback, look, man, I expect what you expect. The race is going to say what they're going to say. They're going to say what they're going to say. Yeah. But I've had a few Black people, come saying, oh, is it debatable? Oh, I'm not sure. Oh, then I don't agree, etc., etc. And I just want to draw a line here. Like, because you've clearly missed the point about something. Like, when we're talking about terms like coconut, House Negro, Uncle Tom, etc., etc., you can disagree with them. You could not like them. Fair enough. That's a debate. But there is no debate, or should be no debate from us at least, about whether they are criminal offences. Even Nels Abbey, who we had on the pod last, Nels Abbey writes to The Guardian, also has a great book, Hip Hop MBA just came out as well, organizes Uppity. Uppity events are really good. If you're in London, go check out Uppity. And, we had this whole debate about, should it be a crime? Should these terms be criminalized? By the end of it, nobody in the audience and even the other people on the other side had all come around to our view, which is like, It shouldn't be a crime. People shouldn't be arrested for this. We can have a debate about it, but it's not a criminal offense. It's not debatable. So honestly, if you're really coming onto my timeline to say this, I don't know what to say. Like Malcolm said, no, I know 100% what to say. Because I just say what Malcolm said. You think you left nothing? You left nothing in Africa? You left your mind in Africa. You are gone. That is some House Negro nonsense. If you're going to defend the state, the police, the already common strip search black girls in their exams, the stop and search us, throw us in prison at disproportionate rates, you want them to come and arrest us for using black intellectual tradition? You think that's a debate? Nah, man, that's got you gone. You far gone. And the same people coming on my timeline with this nonsense are gonna at Black History Month, they'll be like, oh yeah, Malcolm X. Nah, take the man's name out your mouth. Take out Garvey out your mouth. Take the Panthers out your mouth. God, you think Claudia Jones could stand these coconuts? Gone. Nah, like you just lost your mind if you think this is a debate. And this is the problem. That we become so in it. So that's what the House Negro mentality is, that we just get trapped thinking this is even a discussion. Honestly, that's the boldest point for me. I don't know what to say. You really, there needs to be a cleanse. Maybe that's what it is. Malcolm said the biggest mistake he had was trying to organize a sleeping people, and so many of us are asleep, man. Like I said, we can have a debate about whether you think it's appropriate, but there should be no conversation about whether it should be a crime, whether people should be arrested for this. Just move on with your life. Honestly, I don't know what to say. I really don't know what to say about it. So I would also say, when it comes to the whole coconut House Negro debate, like I named a number of conservatives, black Tories, and look, Tories. Again, I don't think this is up for debate, but maybe you can make it some kind of argument. Conservative Party ain't got no place in progressive politics. They're not for us. They are not for us. Simple as that. So if you're in the party, it's kind of problematic. just being in it, right? But I also want to stress here that this ain't reserved. Coconut House Negro, etc. ain't reserved for Tories. There are many people in Labour you can call out. Again, today I ain't doing. I told you I ain't naming no names today because I don't want to get no other people in trouble. But if you're in the shadow cabinet and you're defending Israel committing war crimes, you're defending Israel committing genocide, you're saying this, oh, you know what, is this their right to do this? And you're saying, oh, let's not call for a ceasefire in the middle of a genocide, a racial genocide at that. I don't know, right? If you're on the side of the party that doesn't want to, if you're on the side of the party supporting this immigration policy that Labour has, well, they're essentially just the Tory party light, right? They're not going to deport you to Rwanda, but they still want to stop the boats, all this stuff. They still want to restrict your liberties, etc. If you're on the side of the Labour Party that is saying that we're not going to lift one of the biggest terrible things that the Tories did was to put the 2-child cap on child benefit, which has put tens of thousands of children into poverty. And by the way, anytime you see a stat that says tens of thousands of children are in poverty, I promise you, black children are more likely to be in that group. Just by definition of where we are in this society. And you got a Labour government coming in saying, oh no, we're not going to address it. And you're going to be the face of that? Okay, I don't know. There's words we can use, right? So there's many, please believe me, this is not in any way, shape, or form. This is not language just reserved for Tories. As I said in the video, it's not language just reserved for those who are middle class. Many people coming it up, cooning it up, etc., right? Now, I also want to stress, there's some great people in the Labour Party. You can represent black people and be in the Labour Party. This is the difference with the Tories. The Tories are so bad, and particularly this version of the Tories is so bad. You in the Tory party, you ain't representing us. And to be fair, you've made a choice not to represent us. So please stop trying to represent us, because you just made a choice, right? In the Labour Party, there's people there's really good people in the Labour Party. Dawn Butler, who came on the pod last series as well. I had a great interview with Dawn Butler. Dawn Butler's always represented. She's always represented. You know, there are people who are, so you can represent in the Labour Party, but also you cannot represent in the Labour Party too. There's different ways to do it. Labour's a big party, broad church, etc., right? And thinking about that, and what I wanted to talk about in the intro today was to think about the election, right? Because in the UK, we've got an election coming up. It will be, after this podcast, the general election. And this myth of the black vote. We keep being told the black vote. It's a really bad way to understand political power. right? Now, it's not like America, where there's a massive population of us. Because of that, we can have real impact on the polls on a local level, on a national level, right? Firstly, in the UK, most of the stuff is national anyway, so local elections, you've got very little power local. The local government has very, very little power, right? I mean, Birmingham, where I live, is bankrupt, right? It's mostly about national elections. That's where things get made. That's where power is made. Now, I was counting to think, I think I voted in 7 general elections, showing my age, but also showing how many bloody elections there's been in the last few years. 7 general elections. Every single time, Labour won my seat, right? I could have voted anybody. I could have voted BNP. Don't matter, like Labour won my seat every time. Labour's going to win my seat this time. Because first myth of the black vote is we all kind of live, most of us, because we live in inner city areas, because of residential race segregation, we tend to live in inner city areas. I promise you, the vast majority of the population live in areas which are very safe Labour seats. I haven't done this whole statistical analysis of this, but just go through the neighbourhoods: Brixton, Hackney, Peckham. In Birmingham, you've got Handsworth, Lizelle, etc., Oxford, Moss Side. And just go through the neighbourhoods where we live. I promise you will find they are mostly safe Labour seats. And if you live in a safe Labour seat, your vote is meaningless. It just is. Like my vote for the last, how long? 20 years I've been voting for? Don't matter. I can vote anybody, not vote. Don't make the slightest bit of difference. This is why Labour takes us for granted. Because they know this. They know that unless we're going to start moving out into the burbs and that, moving out into different, it's not. We're very highly concentrated in areas which are very, very Labour, which is why they take us for granted, which is why you can see how they treated Diane Abbott. Right? Because they don't care. They do what they like. You can see how they flaunting their stuff around Gaza and all this and nobody, etc., etc. Because there is a majority of us, the same with just generally, broadly speaking, racialized minorities, we tend to live in inner city areas which tend to heavily vote Labour, which really does mean that your vote, statistics, vote counts. No, really. Unfortunately, that's the problem, right? So I've actually, this year, this election, I've already said the first time I'm not going to vote Labour. This Labour Party, everything that is done, from Gaza, through Diane, through the economic policy, through the immigration policy, they're Tory light. They're not for me, honestly, not the one. I'm not going to vote for Labour. No doubt. I'm going to vote for Malcolm X. I'm going to take a big X, put a ballot on it, and just put it in. I'll vote, but I ain't voting Malcolm. I ain't voting Labour. Can't do it. Can't do it no more. But I can do that because my vote is actually meaningless, right? If you are one of the black people who live in an area where it is Tory, Labour, etc., please do vote, and please vote Labour. I will say that right there. It does matter. The Tories are awful. They need to go. So if you're in a non-safe seat, and please do vote Labour. But if you're not, it don't matter. It really doesn't matter. And the fact that we think it does tells us all of the problems that we have with our political imagination, right? It's the fox and the wolf. Like Malcolm says, the Tory party is the fox. They got their big teeth, they're growling at you, and they want to bite you, and they're telling you they want to eat you. But the Labour Party is the fox. They're showing their teeth, but they're smiling. They're trying to lure you into their den. You're still going to get eaten either way. You're still in the doghouse, whichever way you go, right? This system is not built for us. So one might be slightly better than the other. This is true. And the fact is, when we talk about survival pending revolution, sometimes you just have to go for the lesser of the two evils. America's got the same issue going on with Trump and Biden. There's the lesser of two evils to make your life slightly better. Please do make sure they get in power, right? But that is not political power. That is no solution. Labour is no solution to our problems. They're not, and they take us for granted all the time. So we need to have much more political maturity, as Malcolm would call it. Yes, you should register to vote. Yes, maybe you should vote, but maybe vote. Just vote for nobody. Like I said, I'm voting for nobody. It's still a vote, still counts, still registers under somebody voted. But we need to be really thinking, what is the strategy for us as a people with electoral politics? Because this Labour-Tory thing is not a strategy, right? Are there seats that we could get, that we could actually win as different parties, right? This has been tried before and it's a bit difficult, etc., etc., etc. But we need a much better way of understanding politics, right? Much better. And actually, this is what we're talking about and trying to do with the MBEs, right? This is what Malcolm was telling you when he said that when he started the OAAU, Organization of Afro-American Unity, the idea was to have different branches in different parts of the world, very similar to Garvey's UNAA, right? And mass membership organizations. So we put our taxes as our membership fee, we pay into that. We're locally organized and we're going to do this, we're going to take over this, we're going to have strategies for education, for health, for economics, for psychology, whatever the strategies are, you need culture, etc., etc. and we're going to build a mass organization where we're strategically saying we're going to do this, this, this. Work can make strategic demands like we want this, this, and this. And this is what we're saying we want to do with Harambe OBU. We picked up that legacy and said it's time to build that organization. That's what political power looks like. Political power does not look like voting for the Labour or voting in that machine. The government of Britain is never going to be in your favor, right? This system can no more provide freedom, justice, and equality than a chicken can lay a duck egg. It's just not meant to do it. Power comes when we organize. So imagine what we're trying to do is say, look, let's have a chapter in Birmingham, let's have a chapter in London, let's have a chapter in Newcastle, let's have a chapter in Kingston, let's have a chapter in Kinshasa, let's build this global organization. And imagine the power that comes if you have a mass black organization with resources, with a political vision, with a political strategy. Then no matter which government is in power, let's say like, imagine in 5 years, in England, we had 100,000 members, organization, chapters all over the country. We're doing educational work, we're doing housing work, we're doing this stuff. We've got our own media we can put out and stuff. No matter what government you have, you can put pressure on them. You can say, nah, you know what I'm saying? We can mobilize people to put pressure on you, do this, what, X, Y, and Z. That's political power. Not the ballot. It's us organizing. As Garvey said, the greatest weapon used against the Negro is disorganization. And what the powers that be will do, they'll come to you and say, oh, well, we can organize you. No. Organization, that's always been our lack. And it's always been the thing that we need to build. So this is what we're calling the Convention of African People for Gambia, May 17th to 19th. We want to, in the period building up to that, we want to get Black United Front, build Black organizations together. We want to encourage you to start branches, go out, talk to each other, connect, join the organization. And let's come together. Let's build something that can sustain us locally, nationally, and globally, and can take us forward. That's the political project that we need. Not this electoral back and forth, fox and the wolf, Anyway, so I'm going to talk about this much more throughout the pod on the thing. And if you go to Make It Plain, you will see an article from me about OAAU, 60th anniversary, 60 years since the OAAU was founded, and also what we're trying to do with Harambe OBU and Gambia as well in CAP 25. All right, so I said after the break here, we're going to talk to George the Poet, former grime artist, music artist, went into spoken word, has done great stuff. Check out the book, track record. Also check out his podcast. Have you heard George's podcast on BBC Sounds? Anyway, let's get into it. Thanks for listening as well. All right. So we have George the Poet. Welcome to the pod. It's great to see you.
Great to be here, man. Thank you very much. I'm a big fan.
That's good to hear because I'm a big fan too. So it would just be a fan, fan back and forth.
Just a fan of. Thank you. But I mean, from jump, bro, I'll say that you. I've just released my book, obviously, track record, and you were hugely influential, as you might tell from reading it. So, like, not just on the book, but on my direction.
Agree.
Because a lot of stuff has not been made plain, and you've done the work for a long time, for longer than most people who come to this professionally. Imagine. So here's the thing. I read Back to Black and I was like, who's this guy? And I looked for your PhD. So it's from your PhD that I realized how long you've been doing this for. So yeah, I got you.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks. It's because I listened to the book recently, and it was I still get surprised. You write stuff, you don't know people are going to read it. So I always like when you reference stuff, I was like, oh, wow, that's nice. And referencing the PhD as well, because that's a deep.
I referenced the PhD, didn't I? Yeah. True. Yeah. I forgot that I did that.
No one reads PhD. Oh, that's a secret. Yeah. No one reads them. So that was good to see. But no, the book was really good. I saw track records came out in April, right?
Yeah, April 25th. I realized I should line it up in the background.
Yeah, exactly. You should have a copy. I've got a copy somewhere too as well.
Yeah.
There we go. Everyone can see.
There we go. Yeah.
I should have my copy. Because you sent me I should have my copy out here too, promoting it. I'll put it on here when we do the intro. I'll definitely have it.
Say that.
So it's part memoir, it's part politics. Like, why'd you write the book?
Yeah, initially I wrote the book because my whole career was an experiment, and I really wanted to update people on how the experiment has gone. There was a lot to say in terms of creativity, generating opportunities out of the our lived experience. Because we all got lived experience, and a lot of my audience are not in a position to professionalize or academize or formalize their lived experience. So I wanted to be able to give a set of notes that was like, okay, forget my degree, forget my poetry skills. What I started with is a lived experience that we all share, and I learned the techniques of how to deliver that lived experience in a way that is multidimensional and is functional. People won't just hopefully listen to me because they like the sound of what I'm saying, but at some point the substance becomes the main character. So I wanted to really teach what I have learned in that pursuit. But then, I started writing this book in 2020, lockdown, and then George Floyd, protests, and I was compelled to not be so insular. I couldn't just write a book about my experience. I felt compelled to give a lot more context, a lot more historical context, and that's why the book ended up being what it is.
What did the publishers think? Because I know these publishers. When you start putting in, because the book's got a lot. It's like bare Pan-African politics, all about the struggle. Now I'm guessing that's not what they were looking for when they first signed the book.
To their credit, the publishers were open. They were open to the change of direction, and they kind of believed in my convictions as to why I was writing. I made it clear that our original plan would have been redundant in this climate. I don't feel like reading a celebrity memoir, and I don't really want to draw that instinct out of my audience anyway. So yeah, they big up my editor. It was from there. It was a long journey of making, marrying where I started with where I was trying to go. It was quite a long journey still.
Yeah, no, it's good. I mean, what really comes out is, the subtitle is "The War on Blackness." What does that look like? What does that mean? The War on Blackness.
It's a messy title, It's not, but it's a messy situation. So we got this thing, blackness. It was imposed on us. It has become a category by which we have to contend with, and it is obviously in response to whiteness. We'll talk about your book in a second. But because this category, this imaginary thing, has been crystallized in the public imagination and it has been historicized a certain way, we have to decide how we're going to contend with it. And what you find very quickly is it's quite adversarial conditions that we're competing with on a political level, on an economic level, and to really give people a sense of how all of these dilemmas come together, I had to wrap it up in the phrase the war on blackness.
So I was saying, like, the one of the really good things about the book is you put the personal experience, the music industry, but then you put it in this much bigger political economic thing with the war on blackness, and it really helps. Well, it helped me to understand that. But how difficult was that for you to write that and to bring that all together?
I think what happened is, I embarked on a PhD around the same time as I started this book. This is relevant, I guess, to our conversation because the original inquiry of the PhD is, how is black music such a sure thing with so little resource, so little input other than our lived experience and some of our ancestral storytelling and musical techniques and impulses. How is it such a sure thing, but that is not reflected in the economic conditions of the communities that produce some of the most commercially dominant black music? You know, it's a dichotomy that's been bothering me my whole life. So again, like I say, my career has been an experiment. I embarked on that myself. I took storytelling techniques from my community, lyrical techniques from my community, and I parlayed them into sorry, you might hear my son in the background.
Yeah, sorry.
I parlayed those techniques into a pedagogy that would allow me to talk to people about a lot of different stuff. And I tried to make it commercially appealing to the music industry. I showed them why we had an advantage. We had the drop on the market. You know, I put it in their language. I was like, look, we've got an opportunity to do something that hasn't been done before. And I quickly found out that that wasn't their interest. And not only was it not their interest, but they were much more interested in a less successful, less interesting version of what I was proposing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I in the book I mentioned that at the time I found that weird, but I put it down to the madness of the industry. I put it down to there being no real criteria for expertise or anything. Now, looking back, it makes a lot more sense in the political economy of media.
Yeah, they want a particular thing. I actually didn't realize you became a spoken word artist rather than started as a spoken word artist. So you kind of pivot from like MCing to spoken word. Why was that?
Facts. I pivoted from MCing to becoming a spoken word artist because ultimately, as an MC, I felt that there was an ideological bubble that we were in, that there were certain things that we were allowed to do and not allowed to do. And it felt self-imposed. It felt like my MC friends were the first people to say you can't do that.
Yeah.
Rather than the audience. You know, I had this ongoing debate. I'm sorry. 1 second. He's more likely to be cooperative when he's on my lap.
Okay, hey, we got a guest on the pod.
Say hello to the people.
It's difficult with kids, you know.
It is what it is.
It's good. Busy learning anyway.
There you go.
Yeah.
So I was an MC before I was a poet, and I felt that there were a lot of self-imposed limitations on what an MC could do. It would be my MC friends to say, you can't talk about that, or to insist that there was a certain presentation, a certain performance of masculinity that we had to subscribe to. And I was always curious about where these rules came from and why they were like sacrosanct. So going back to this whole thing about my career developing as an experiment, it was largely in response to those debates that I had with my peers as a teenager to say, nah, man, we are multifaceted. We're more intelligent than the music allows us to demonstrate. So it's kind of on us to expand the imagination of what an MC, a black lyricist, a black artist in an urban diaspora. It's on us to expand the imagination of what that could be.
Yeah.
And that developed into poetry for me.
That's I mean, you must have been able to make more money doing the more reductive stuff, right? So that's a choice that you made.
Yeah. You know, like I've had a lot of conversations about the Kendrick Lamar and Drake clash, and people are often surprised. I mean, I trust you. I can talk to you about this. I mentioned it in a few interviews, and newspaper editors obviously try to sensationalize my take. Well, anytime I talk about rappers, that becomes the headline. But between you and I, people have often been a bit surprised about my disappointment with Kendrick in the whole situation. And one of the few points that I make is that we all have choices. You know, I have often said that at this time of intense US aggression around the world, intensifying aggression, and acute domestic problems. And if you want to just narrow it down to Black America, domestic problems within Black America, I have found it disappointing that the biggest thing on Kendrick's mind is Drake.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, oh, or Kendrick fans will often be, to his defense, will push back and say, he's in the music industry. He can only talk about so much. His career will probably go, be different if he does this and that. And I just say we all have choices. I'm not talking from the perspective of someone who has no experience of that industry.
I was thinking about the responsibility of artists. So someone like Kendrick, who has a reputation for being political, which is probably more than he actually is really political. But like, you've got the mic, you've got a platform. Do Black artists have a responsibility politically, do you think?
So I've always approached my thing like, yeah, there is a responsibility. Bless you. I've always approached my career as if there is a responsibility. And for the longest time, I have accepted that people can check out of that responsibility if they so wish. But you know what? In recent years, I'm less accommodating of that position. It's hard for many people in my generation and our generation. It's hard for many people born in the 80s onwards to grasp what has been lost in terms of class consciousness, race consciousness, internationalism, collective responsibility. It's hard. It's hard for many of us to understand how much has been lost and what an assault has been made on the ability to mobilize Black consciousness. But when you think about that and understand that the rise of individualism in Black music and across society in general, the advent of neoliberal economics and the politics that comes with it, everyone backing away from a sense of social responsibility, and that becoming normalized across our media in what I call hip-hopaganda. I'm just less tolerant of the idea that, listen, man, if you don't want to get involved in all of that politics stuff, that's cool. I can see how it happens. I can see how all the rappers of this generation have arrived at that point. But it doesn't mean I have to respect it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's the way now, isn't it? Like, hip hop, it's changed so dramatically that we just don't expect. We don't really expect much. We don't expect much at all. Which is why someone like Kendrick, who isn't really that political, gets this big reputation, because you drop a couple of lines and all of a sudden you're like Malcolm X.
It's such a contrast of what's going on. One story that I always give people in order to like convey my disappointment is, I say that he hadn't said anything about the genocide, and the first thing I heard from him was about Drake. And people are like just making all sorts of excuses for him. And I say, listen, man, when Tupac was convicted and locked up and he was on Rikers, he was taking a lot of interviews in the first few months of his sentence. And there was one interview he did in February 1995 where, typical Tupac, he went off script and he started talking about the US aggression in Bosnia. Within days, he was transported, he was changed, he was transferred to a prison upstate, and he wasn't allowed any more interviews. And then everyone says, yeah, but that's Tupac. And I accept that Tupac was special, but I do think there is the potential to cultivate that kind of focus, that kind of standard, that kind of solidarity within hip hop. It is just it's undermined.
Yeah, but that's why your work's so powerful, and the book in particular. I mean, you cover a lot. Yeah, I'm gonna get actually when I get to the bit you said you didn't put in the book we talked off and a bit about Obama, because Obama does catch some strays in the book. But I'm going to apologize to my mum now because she don't like it with this Obama, but hey, comes up a lot.
Sorry, auntie. But you shouldn't have done what you did.
You said there was a section in the book you called the anti-African. It was about Obama, didn't make it in. So I want to ask you about that. How is Obama the anti-African?
So this section came from. Can you hear him?
No, he's like, why are you dissing Obama? See,
Even you. This section came from a desire to talk about Gaddafi, Libya, and the African dinar, the currency that Gaddafi was looking to introduce. I wanted to explain how I started my podcast when I heard about the slave trade in Libya. Sorry. I don't know what's going on. 1 second. Sorry. So the section that never made it to my book, which I mentioned to you, called The Anti-African, was me trying to explain Obama's role in the destruction of Libya and how, in particular, that was one of the most anti-African moves he made in a long campaign of being anti-African. The fact that in one of Gaddafi's last interviews, I don't know if you've seen it, he's being interviewed by, I think, an Australian journalist in 2010. And the guy asks him about his view on America and Obama. This is obviously at a time where Gaddafi's changed. He's opened himself up to the world for some decades now. And, he doesn't have the acrimonious relationship with the West that he once had. And he says, look, America will always be America, but Obama's different. It's striking looking back on it now. Have you seen this interview?
I haven't seen it, No.
I'm gonna send it to you afterwards. It is striking how wrong he was. Someone who had a run over so many decades and had to deal with so much imperialism, so many changing faces of imperialism. He was won over by Obama, and he believed that Obama was different. But even though he reserved judgment on the American system, he was like, listen, man, America will always be America. And then what was unfolding over the course of late 2010 was subversive movements, activities by the French intelligence services to destabilize Libya, which quickly escalated into the full-scale Western invasion the following year. And one thing that really irks me about Obama is the manipulation, the emotional manipulation, the whole uncle vibe. When you talk to him, or in his interviews, when he's been asked what his biggest regret of his presidency is, he does his the whole noble, or humbly, I just wish we really did more to support Libya after we blew it up. And it's it just perfectly captures his disingenuous nature. In the section of the book that I'm talking to you about that never made it, I talk about that the international hypocrisy, but I also get into the domestic hypocrisy. Good. Him, flexing, pushing back on black journalists who wanted to hold him to account. Say, I'm not the president of Black America, or I'm not the Black American president, whatever he said.
Yeah.
And just generally making reflections on all the gaslighting that was entailed in him becoming the face of U.S. imperialism while still being dubbed like the hip hop president, while presiding over deteriorating conditions for Black Americans, very high profile cases of police brutality, murders of innocent Black American citizens. Sorry, Kehinde's mom. I'm really sorry. But it's a no from me.
Yeah. But that I didn't see that video from Gaddafi, but the fact that Gaddafi was like, oh yeah, Obama. And
In 2010.
Yeah, he had a couple of years at that point. What is it about him though? Is it that, are we that starved for symbols that when we see people in these positions, we're like, yes. Because like I said, my mum, I'm the most radical person I know. Still defends Obama. Still. How you
That
still
made me
defend Obama?
laugh. When I read that in your book, I was like, yo, because, you've mentioned your interactions with your parents. I remember one of either your mum or your dad saying that they felt Eldridge Cleaver was, compromised. Was it
Oh yeah,
Eldridge
my
Cleaver?
dad. 100%
Dad?
When I said my dad was like, yeah, he was definitely FBI. Like definitely, like it wasn't even a question.
Right, and I've never heard, anyone in their generation talking like that. So I'm like, okay, you got radical parents. And for even your mom to be taken in by the Obama delusion, I understand, no disrespect, auntie. Like, I fully understand the resonance was so deep and the hope was so intense. That we fall into these weird disclaimers when it comes to him of like, the president's not all powerful. Imagine what he was up against.
Yeah.
He had an aggressive Congress. His hands were tied. And I do think it's probably like the Kendrick syndrome, where we're just so starved of anything that looks like a positive representation that we get caught up at the representation level. You know what I'm saying? And it's very hard to penetrate further and be like, yeah, but what's the substance of this person offering?
Yeah, I think it was the Obama stuff, because I think in the book you're saying how originally you were probably in the delusion and then you kind of came out of it. What was it that shook you out?
I won't give myself too much credit, man. I can't break my arm patting myself on the back because I came out of it late. And I do think it was this whole turn, an opportunity to really immerse myself in analysis, my PhD.
Yeah.
And that has been, since 2020, over the past 4 years, where I'm just taking stock. I mean, prior to that, I was, I did feel that there was an irreconcilable, what's the word? Contradiction in all of the brutality that we saw and the deteriorating conditions of Black America. But I came across a book called The Black Agenda, which is a compilation of excerpts from Black Agenda Radio, which was headed by, was it Glenn Ford?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And it really has a well documented from maybe around 2007, I think before Obama was even elected, a well documented collection of articles and opinion pieces that are really incisive in their critique of Obama's policies, his sleights of hand, things he would do in the media, things he would do internationally, and that really opened my eyes.
Okay.
Yeah, radical Black media has changed everything for me.
Okay. Yeah, it's good, and it's good, particularly your podcast and other sources that we have different voices coming out. Because definitely around 2008, there wasn't much critical at all. I've been saying the same thing for the whole time, but no one cared back in the day. Right? Yeah, I'm just really upset that I didn't come up with White House Negro 12 years ago. It took me ages. It took me too long.
I'm just upset that I didn't come up with it full stop. That one there. Woo. I know. But,
my mum was not happy. Well,
So what? So all now, if you talk about Obama a certain way, does she like tense up?
Yeah, still. She got used to it because I do it all the time.
Yeah. But, and she don't share your critique, or is she like, she sees it, but...
Yeah, she gets it, but then it's like, well, look, it's still different. It was still momentous. It was still... something happened, right? Yeah, something definitely happened. But I mean, Black Lives Matter starts under Obama. Like, that should tell you something. Like, it's not...
Yeah.
They didn't change anything. They didn't... No. I'd actually say everything got worse, probably. Yeah. 8 years, everything actually deteriorated. And internationally, it was horrendous.
Come on.
Well, yeah. But anyway, Obama, sorry. Yeah.
And I think his thing ties quite well with this idea of hip hopaganda.
Yeah.
This idea, this very warped idea that hip hop is the real. You know, it is the voice. It's what the masses are feeling. Come on, man. It hasn't been that since the 80s, probably. Number one. Number two, hip hop has backed away. I think I might make the case in my book that it's ever since Tupac. Well, I feel like it is. Ever since Pac, hip hop has backed away from taking itself seriously and addressing itself to the world in political terms.
Yeah.
You know, the biggest political statement hip hop has made is vote or die, which is not it's not a political statement.
Yeah.
Right. I think that even started. When did that start? Whenever Diddy did it, but I realize it has carried through to Hillary. You know, the last election, and Charlemagne's doing his thing now for you know, trying to, again, the hip hopaganda, trying to act like the culture has something to say about the upcoming election, and it's just a woeful situation, man.
Yeah, it's like, you're right. Hip hop is very much like Obama. It's not for us anymore, right? I mean, when it goes mainstream, it's not for us. It's about people who are buying the records, which most of them are white, and so the message has to change.
That's how it goes.
Unfortunately,
Sorry, I will say that is where I did sympathize with the back and forth between Kendrick and Drake. I felt like to a lot of people, Kendrick represented the resentment towards that undeniable vacuousness, the vapid, you know, vibe of Drake's thing, and they get lost in something that you helped me deal with in my own life, my own career. That kind of, what did you call it? Liberal nationalism?
Liberal radicalism. Probably.
Liberal radicalism, right? So the idea that we're going to sing our way into liberation. Without addressing the material conditions, and
you
the
can seem radical,
context.
but it's not really radical at all.
Yeah, and it just you changed a lot, man. Nowadays, when I hear, you know, all respect to her, but when I hear Angela Davis talk, I hear a lot of, you know, the scenario that you laid out in Back to Black, where you asked her, like, you know, is there not a tension between you being in the academy and then, you know, there needing to be radical change? And she was like, what tension? And a lot of what I've understood about how her thing developed, with all respect to everything that she has done, there are parameters.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say that was one of my most disappointing. It wasn't really a conversation because it was in a Q&A, but the answer, I was like, well, what kind of an answer is that? Like, you must see attention, and particularly like America, academics get paid crazy money. They get paid $10,000 to speak, and you're saying I'm radical this, radical that. I don't get it. I still don't get it. I have to say. But don't meet your heroes. That's what I always say. Never meet your heroes. You always.
Fair, man. That's why I'm just relieved that this conversation's going so well so far, man. Shit.
Oh man. But I did enjoy. I have to say, I enjoyed Kendrick Drake beef. I don't know, entertainment. Sometimes it's entertainment, and sometimes it's politics in it.
I fully enjoyed it. Let me not lie.
Yeah, it was entertaining, but yeah,
I fully enjoyed it.
But there is a much bigger thing. And Kendrick, actually, maybe we need to do something like Kendrick, because there is. And if you just compare Kendrick and Pac, it's not like, come on. I mean, but maybe he was the one-off. Like, he was gonna start. It was either there's this documentary. Is it called Dear Mama? On he did like a series, and if he hadn't got his break, he would have gone and started the Black Panther Party again. I mean, he's one of one, I guess. One of one. It's just, you can hear it. Yeah. Something else I wanted to pick up in the book that didn't make it into the book is you go offered an MBE, right? Member of the British Empire. Yeah. And you turned it down, right? Yeah, man. Yeah. Why do you hate? Well, I think the question is, why do you hate Britain? Well, after everything Britain's done for me. Yeah. So you're not grateful? Come on. Not grateful, man. Why? MBE.
yeah, so I explained in the book that I hadn't really had a chance to think about what I would do if I was offered an MBE before it actually came. When the offer came and I was reading the letter stipulates that, look, this thing can be taken away if you misbehave, long story short. And it occurred to me that this is a really strange way to honor someone. And I was just reading the wording. I'll never forget looking at the letter and reading the wording. It's actually member of the Order of the British Empire.
Okay.
And it didn't take long, man. By the next day, I was like, oh, hell no. I didn't read a new book. I didn't, but I unplugged myself from the conventional logic.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of history in this country is transferred not through analysis, not through discussion of the facts, just through a vibe. A general vibe. And that general vibe empowers a lot of people falsely to feel like they've kind of got the gist of this thing. They got the thrust of it. And in that 24 hours after I received the offer for the MBE, I confronted that complacency. I was like, if I'm going to have those words after my name, let me just take a second to assess what I know. All right? I know what the British Empire meant in my region of the world. My parents are from Uganda. I know what the British Empire meant for across the spectrum of Black life that I have come into contact with in this country, and I know what it meant, outside of the Black world. In every scenario, Britain walked away with the resources and with a free to heavily discounted labor force, which is racialized to be inferior to the labor force of the center, the imperial core. So, I hadn't done as much reading as I've done now at that point, but I didn't need any more insight to understand that I was being used to make the empire seem consensual, make it seem mutually beneficial, and make it seem like we all lived happily ever after.
Yeah. This must have been a Tory government we had here. So would it make a difference if it was I'd say better, but not Tory government who'd offered you the MBE?
No, wouldn't have made a difference. I think just at that point in my life, the age I was and the things that I was leaning into, it doesn't matter who offered it to me. What would have made a difference is if the wording was different. That might have tricked me, and they're not clocking, like, if they really want to manipulate the story on what the so-called Commonwealth is, they should just move on from that word empire. Just let it go once and for all. You'd be a lot more stealthy, be able to move under the radar. But because of your hubris, you insist on holding on to this word, and in doing so, exposing what your whole project has been and how you're trying to reconcile it with the present day.
It is strange how they don't change it. Because to be honest, I didn't even know what MBE stood for until I think Benjamin Zephaniah rejected it, and that's the first time I even knew. MBE, I thought it was something else. The fact they won't change it tells you just how deep empire goes, right?
Yeah, man. Was it your book or was it Kojo's? Yeah, Kojo Karam on Commonwealth.
Mm-hmm.
You two's books came. Yeah, I think New Age of Empire came out around the same time, and I read those two books at the same time. Sick. But in his book, he explains how there was an intentional misremembering about what the empire was when Britain realized it wasn't going to be able to hold on to it. And this insistence on holding on to the word shows that internal conflict, because on the one hand, you're trying to act like it wasn't that deep. Britain didn't make that much money out of the empire. It was a civilizing mission. We're all the Commonwealth now. And on the other hand, you know, you insist on recruiting people like me to this so-called empire of yours in the 21st century.
That's mad, is it? But that is, I mean, one of the, back in the day, they used to really teach empire in a very bad way. And now we don't talk about it really at all. I'm not sure which is worse. I don't know. I actually don't know which is it worse to just big up the empire or just completely kind of ignore it?
Good question, man.
Because I've never, not in one classroom have I ever heard the word empire other than the ones where I talk, when it comes up a lot.
Yeah.
But how do you go through that? That's the biggest thing in Britain, right? Like, there really is no Britain without empire, but we don't even talk about it.
I mentioned in my book how, looking back on history classes, you know, somehow we skipped the 1700s.
Yeah.
We didn't mention nothing about the 1700s. When the empire, British Empire, really came into its own, and the whole global system of human trafficking and, you know, expropriation really crystallized. But I appreciate the lack of conversation around it, because that just leaves the space open for people like you. Which is what you did. Like when I read The New Age of Empire, that gave me a new clarity around this word. But prior to that, even the title, The New Age of Empire, wouldn't necessarily, if I wasn't that way inclined, it wouldn't necessarily have meant much to me.
But yeah. I mean, I guess we can do what we can do, but the fact it's still in the awards. I mean, you actually, what do you think of black people who take it? MBE, member of the Order of the British Empire. Like, I don't know. What do you think?
I was quite accommodating before. You know, I didn't feel like I had the authority to talk about other people's reasoning. I just needed a bit of time to really set into my own. But now that I'm here, I think it's a mistake.
Yeah,
I think it is a mistake. A lot of people say, look, again, with a lot of the framework you've helped me with, under a black liberal framework, the idea is, with expanded access to the liberal institutions of this country, we're going to end racism. If we get more black police, more black teachers, more black MBEs, we're going to be able to have a seat at the table and change this and that. And I was recently having a back and forth with someone where I asked them to name one person who's done it. Who fixed it?
Yeah.
You know, it's quite arrogant of us to think that we are the first generation that has figured this out. And now we realize that we just got to get our MBEs up, which are, you know, our parents didn't quite get it. So I think it's a misread, and it's a misread that is intentional. It is assured by an education system that don't talk about empire. It is assured by what I was mentioning earlier, the general vibe, history via vibes. People vibes their way through history. You know, I get the vibe things have changed. I get the vibe that, you know, there was some good and some bad, without just doing the hard empirical analysis.
Yeah.
So when you get all of those things, it ends up in a situation where people can delude themselves about what they are doing when they accept an MBE. And I feel that if I was able to get all of these MBE and OBE perspectives and people that accepted it, if I was able to just get them in a boot camp, designed by you, by the end of it, we would get them to admit that the only benefit was personal gain.
Yeah, it is, right? I mean, the knighthood one is the one that gets me. How are you going to kneel before the king or queen? And honestly,
Vibes. Just vibes. It's not
And
that
then
deep.
post pictures back like he's celebrating. Shit. I don't know. But no, it made me think because one of the only justification I heard isn't really a good one because I won't say who it was. I was talking to somebody who took an MBE and he was like, yes, Empire's terrible, I understand. But it opens doors, it allows me to do things. But as you point out, what doors are you opening? Like, that's the problem,
Tell
right?
us.
Like, what are we doing?
Tell us what happened. What did you do? You know, another thing that people say is, if my parents, came to this country with nothing, it would make them feel proud. And again, you're making the case for personal gain. I'm not even going to challenge your value system if you feel like, the best thing you could do for your parents is to ingratiate yourself with the same people that set in motion a series of events that caused them to have to leave their country. Forget that bit. But you being able to say to your parents, this is what I did. And don't get it twisted. Your mom gets upset when you talk about Obama. My mom was upset when I turned down the MBE.
How was she?
She was upset at first. And then, to her credit, she came around. And she was proud of me for standing 10 toes down. But there's a lot of indoctrination that goes into this thing. Again, the psychosis. We become sucked into the psychosis. We haven't even talked about your book, man. That one there.
No, it's about your stuff, man. You can talk to it.
But can I just say, this morning I was thinking to myself how timely your book was. Unfortunately, we want the psychosis we want to break the shackles of the psychosis. Yeah. But unfortunately, your book is more relevant than ever. The more I try and figure out how, a friend of mine recently asked, Piers Morgan, he's white. My friend said, Piers Morgan has said that Israel is in the wrong. Is this not progress? Because I see a lot of people shouting him down. And I just think, are we missing something by not welcoming this pivot to sense? And I had to explain to him that Piers Morgan always knew that Israel was wrong. Piers Morgan is hedging his bets. Piers Morgan's platform has probably seen the hugest uptick since October 7th in his career, probably. And it is, I had to explain to my mate, it is your delusion, a delusion that I've also been part of in my life, your delusion that his white acceptance of the Palestinian right to life is a sign of progress. When he expresses support for the fact that Palestinian children and innocent women and men shouldn't be blown to bits, when he expresses that view, now we're making progress. You're mad. You're sick. You're mad. You become detached from reality. It's a psychosis.
Yeah, unfortunately. That's a really low bar, isn't it? People to recognize kids shouldn't be blown up. But that is the cycle. It dominates so much of how we move forward. Right? As somebody who's successful, right? You got publishing deal, you're successful. You're then used as a symbol to say, well, look, things have changed. It can't be racism. I'm a professor. You're a celebrity. Look, it's better. What's the problem? What we got Obama. What are we complaining about?
And that's, again, history by vibes. That is the vibe that sets across with everyone who's not in a space where they can get into the analysis, who's not in a tradition of analysis. They just get these signals, they get these indicators about what is appropriate office water cooler conversation, what is the vibe on TV, what is this fake Overton window promoting about the discussion of whether it's the Colston statue or the reckoning of decolonizing education. People just feel their way through these conversations, and whatever the mainstream presents becomes the conclusion. So if the mainstream makes it look like you see Kehinde on TV, you see George's book around, you see Obama, you see Rishi, he's brown, you see Suella, she's brown, you see Pretty, she's brown. If the mainstream shows you all these black faces in high places, then you don't need to use your brain any further than that.
Yeah, unfortunately. I wanted to no. There's two things I wanted to ask you. One of them was, and they're related. So yeah, one of them was you went to Cambridge. I didn't realize you went to Cambridge. How did you? It's not usually what happens. You know, black people go to Cambridge. They don't usually come back talking radicalism or blackness. So how did that go? How did that happen?
Well, when I left Cambridge, I came back to my community, which was always the plan. And I found, to my surprise, that I was being re-educated by my community. And things that I had long heard. I grew up in northwest London, not far from Harlesden, Rastafari stronghold. Things that I'd always heard from the Rasta community started to ring true. You know, they just started to return deep memories from my childhood and sentiments and suspicions that I had. They started to be reinforced by what I was learning as a grown-up, you know. So that was my re-education after Cambridge. To be honest with you, I think a lot of the Cambridge experience went over my head because I felt so disconnected, lonely. I was off doing poetry. I'll be honest, I was largely trying to play the game to pass exams. You know, I didn't feel emotionally connected. There were a few papers, I think I mentioned them in my book. The Political Economy of Capitalism, Media, Culture, Society. But again, I took those papers in my last year of Cambridge. That is when I started really feeling like I'm reading stuff it feels alive. But really coming back and being re-educated in my community, that was the beginning of the whole institutionalized, sanitized form of social analysis that I'd become used to coasting in. That's when it all fell down. But also I got to give credit to the generation after me. I was in the music industry. My career was an experiment. I wanted to show how we could serve our communities better through the narrative techniques and the musical techniques that we all know. My stint in the music industry had some successes, a lot of frustrations. I left the music industry, and in the years after I left, I was writing a lot of angry stuff about the industry. And I knew that this isn't it. That can't be my legacy. I'm deeply distracted. Fair enough. I'm going through my own emotional process. But I need to come out of this and get to the thing on the other side where I'm actually speaking to what I'm supposed to be speaking about. So I'd been searching since I left the industry for what that thing is, which is why it was so powerful when I heard about the slave markets in Libya. Started pulling that thread, and I realized the EU's complicity in driving the so-called migrant crisis and their hypocrisy. Then I started learning about what Gaddafi really was, and eventually what the Cold War really was, and just one thing after another. So really, because I was trying to triangulate my position within the black world, and because I had committed to being a public figure, I didn't go the route of parliamentary politics. It was incumbent on me not to follow a party line, but to come up with my own line. I had to be led by the evidence, which is what caused me to arrive at a radical place. But no, all credit to the young people who were getting more and more aggy, more and more agitated. You know, they were the proponents of BLM in this country. They were the ones tearing down statues. A lot of them, after I'd been on that little journey of engaging with African politics a bit more, a lot of the young people are the ones that allowed me to reconnect with a radical tradition. Not even reconnect, for the first time, truly connect with a radical tradition.
Yeah, I couldn't leave without asking you about the podcast. Have you heard George's podcast? And just that, I was at a long drive, so I listened to a lot of episodes back to back. And just the education stuff around the Congo, the stuff that, you know, I don't think definitely doesn't get mainstream play a lot. So will be a place where a lot of particularly younger people will come to. How important is that work, you think? And how important is it to kind of expose people to different ideas?
Yeah, I think it's deeply important. One of my fears is that I'll get locked away in an ivory tower. You know, I don't want to just be talking to academics all my life. No offense. But I notice you have the same impulse as well. The importance of making this work accessible, making it real to people. My podcast is my way of doing that. You know, I left the label. I was searching for the thing that it was going to be, and I realized two things. I realized that my inputs need to be different. I need to have a more internationalist view in my music, in my work. I need to be more overtly analytical, but I also realized I need some long form. I need a long form content because the formats that we inherit, rap music, poetry, 3 to 4 minutes at a time, it was insufficient for what I wanted to do. I wanted to take the university level education and just make it a cultural experience, a musical experience, all of that. And the podcast was my way of doing it.
Yeah. Anybody wants to know about Congo, there's Congo episodes. The both of them back to back. And it's obviously very relevant now. But that you need to have the historical context, right, to understand what's happening in a place like Congo.
Yeah. And where is that designated space? You know, it's not going to be, if it's not the academy and it's not the media, we got to create that space our own.
Yeah, and that is a perfect way to bring this to an end, actually, because that is what we're trying to do, right? Like, Black Power has always been about education and having our own spaces. And podcasts, your work, it's a new way of doing it. And that's probably, like, I just finished Malcolm X's book, and it talks about we need a program of political re-education. It's like the fun first thing, because you can't, what does he say? He says the biggest mistake I made was trying to organize a sleeping people. When people are asleep, you can't do it, right? You got to wake them up. And so I think that's why your work is really, really powerful.
Thank you. Likewise, man. Likewise. So thank you for making it mainstream. And, you know, never underestimate the extent to which you are changing the course of grown-ups like myself who are well and truly in their lane, but are ready to pivot or ready to adapt to new information.
Thank you. That means a lot, honestly. That means a lot. So, yeah. I don't take compliments well, so I just say, yeah, it's great. Thanks. Yeah, respect.
All good.
But no, it was really great talking to you. And we'll definitely talk again as well.
Likewise, my bro. Take care.